Well, thanks everyone. It's an absolute privilege to find myself addressing ABARES. Very briefly, Australian Solar Timbers is based in Kempsey. We employ about 100 people. We're totally involved in the flooring business. All our product is flooring other than residues. So we're in the appearance grade area of the market, and we like to think we're at the absolute cutting edge of the technologies that are currently being used. With a topic such as the future of Australian hardwoods, one in 8 minutes, which is what I was told, has to be a little restrictive on what you talk about. And so the thing I really want to focus on is social licence. But in the current situation, to not mention the perfect storm that the industry is in would be a little remiss. And aspects have been touched on by David, pointing out the collapse of the American market has had a huge effect in that importers who normally wouldn't, or exporters from their point of view, but imports into Australia that normally wouldn't focus on Australia have certainly given focus into the hardwood market, and especially in the appearance grade area. And I think that's going to be a permanent feature in the future. They've been aided and abetted, of course, by the Australian dollar being up where it is. You've probably heard about this elsewhere in the conference, and it looks like it's going nowhere south fast. So this is something we're going to have to adapt to. At the same time, our cost base has been, which is essentially not in our control, such as the cost of logs and the cost of labour, are going up well, and electricity well above the CPI. In New South Wales, for example, other than what is essentially a CPI type increase, we're in the midst of a 20% increase that's coming in over 3 years. So we're really running at about 3 times CPI for our main, one of our main costs inputs into the business. And the way we're running OH&S at the moment in Australia is, from my point of view, an IR issue. It's not a safety issue. And for a lot of rural industries, particularly the timber industry, it's an absolutely massive cost. I mean, it can be up to 10% of our output if you get some bad outcomes there. As a doctor, I'm really concerned about the safety aspects. We're not managing those well. All those issues which are, and the other issue, of course, is we've got the hold up in our planning market, which affects the whole of the housing industry in Australia, where there's a pent-up demand which isn't coming through. Now, all those things I'm not going to talk about, but I just wanted to say we have a pretty good storm going on. I think it's going to go on for a couple of years. And the point I actually want to talk about is social licence, because an enormous amount of our resources are being sucked off into dealing with this, when all these other issues which I've just raised should be absolutely forefront in the managing of our business. I think we have 3 options to go forward, which are on the board, which is basically instant closure, slow closure, or let's do something else. If you look at the instant death perspective, I've never been in an industry that is where it's just been so constant. It's not a matter of resolving this. In the 30 years I've been active, it is always on the agenda, because we have a group of people who actually want to close the industry, and any opportunity that comes up, real or contrived, they're going to take. And you only have to look at the Tasmanian election, where both major parties go very strongly positively with the timber industry, but we get a result where a party that gets well under a fifth of the vote is calling the tune, and then you get rapidly unfolding political processes like the statement of principles that had the Green movement suggesting pre-Christmas this year that the whole industry across Australia could be closed down. Now, obviously it wasn't, but even this month we've got the Bill Kelty report that is coming out. Now, this is just a constant danger of our industry that hasn't been resolved yet, that there is a constant, let's close the whole thing down. And as an investor, and we've heard about the big end of town from David, this is the small end of town, but I've got absolutely everything invested in this business, and 3rd generation, and my son's working there. I'm not sure if that's a great idea. It's very disconcerting to conduct business in that environment. One of the issues, if you look at the Tasmanian situation, that there is discussion, should taxpayers compensate workers to quit the industry, and that does get some attention from the Greens. But it strikes me that very much in the Jorn Lomberg school, we're not addressing the whole question. The issue that if that scenario unfolded, of the instant death one, we would lose the construction of our forestry-based skills in our state agencies. And I don't think we value those as highly as they should be. This involves many non-industry issues such as bushfire control. There's an enormous bank up of knowledge in those institutions, and they would dissipate into the bureaucracy, and they would be impossible to reconstruct in the short term. We overlook the costs of the cancerous breakdown of the socio-economic issues when you take away the wealth-producing industries in communities and then let them slowly go into decline. And the question never comes up, well, what do they do with this stuff anyway, and what are we going to replace it with? And I'll have a little bit more to discuss that on that in the next, just in a moment. Clearly what I'm saying is the debate is very focused just on the forests and do we stop logging them, not on the outcomes beyond that, all the outcomes. Now this, don't take this in too seriously, the only line you need to concentrate on is the black line. This is the wood supply agreement model for New South Wales, and it just tells the story. Each state is slightly different, but there's two principles. The line along here shows the current situation of wood supply. That's when the wood supply agreement closes, anytime 7 to 12 years depending on your state, and that's what happens after it. It declines. In the case of New South Wales, minus 41%. Plateaus on along for a few years, then some of those plantations kick in, and we end up just minus 31%, and that is our future for the next 40 or 50 years. This is our current plan of how we manage the hardwood industry in Australia. What other renewable industries are saying, well, our plan is in the future to be 30 or 40% smaller than we are now. Now, bearing in mind it takes 30 to 40 years to go seedling to sawlog, there's some real implications for this. Basically, if we go on the plan we're going on now, we have a couple of options. We can accept this reduction and we can say, right, well, let's all move to non-forest-based products, read non-renewable, in the interests of the environment. Once again, I don't think we've thought it right through. Or we can import the product. Where does it come from? Well, first of all, it's got to come in a ship, chewing up diesel all the way over. Secondly, it's come from less well-managed forests than we have in Australia. I think we underrate, because we're a big island, just the skills base and the certification and the quality of the forest management that we have in Australia. At the same time, we're closing down regional jobs and obviously putting further pressure on urbanisation. Now, again, in the Lomberg School, is that what we're trying to achieve? Because that's going to be the outcome, unless we revisit some other plan. Now, I should just point out that both those instant kill and the slow attrition outcomes say to me, you have an entire continent at your disposal. You have the home of the eucalypt, which is a fantastic hardwood that is very resilient and thrives on active management. And we have a skills base in our various state forestry groups that is absolutely first rate at understanding this. And we're saying that we can't even be self-sufficient in it, with an entire continent nearly the size of America, because we can't conduct the debate. Is that what we're really trying to say? Let someone else do it. Now, bear in mind, in Spain at the moment, there are more Eucalyptus globulus growing than in Tasmania, which is the home of it. And they've got very high-grade industries over there producing the highest grade window constructions, bespoke stuff for the German market. But according to our current debate situation, we're nowhere near it. We can't do it. I think that's a scandalous generational failure by governments, by the industry, our media, the way the debate has been conducted, and especially by our environmentalists. Now, I'm not talking about the Greens, that is a political movement, but their environmentalists should be in absolutely demanding, from a world perspective and from an Australian perspective, that we get a better outcome than a legacy of imports coming from less well-managed forests that are unnecessary while we declined regionally.